Breaking news tonight as two major stories reshape the North American landscape. First, in an unprecedented move that's sending shockwaves through the entertainment industry, ABC has suspended Jimmy Kimmel Live following his controversial comments about activist Charlie Kirk.
Threat took late-night comedian Jimmy Kimmel off the air. Now Donald Trump says TV networks that are against him could face retribution, adding fuel to fears that his administration is ready to use state power to silence critics. ABC preempted Jimmy Kimmel Live last night after the Trump-appointed FCC chair threatened action against the network. The reason? Kimmel's comments earlier this week about slain conservative activist Charlie Kirk. But Trump now suggests that networks that give him only bad press, he says, should have their broadcast licenses suspended. Paul Hunter now with Trump's latest threat and the fierce debate raging over free speech.
ABC, grow a spine! In New York, they chanted ABC, grow a spine outside the offices of ABC parent company Disney. In Los Angeles, more demonstrators, equally angry over the fate of ABC's late-night comedy talk show Jimmy Kimmel Live.
This is unprecedented. We are looking at an authoritarian government crackdown on free speech.
The sudden suspension of Kimmel's program, that's him leaving early when ABC pulled his show from the air, has brought widespread outcry in the U.S. Esteemed former nightly talk show host David Letterman now weighing in, slamming ABC for caving under pressure.
You can't go around firing somebody because you're fearful or trying to suck up to an authoritarian criminal administration in the Oval Office. That's just not how this works.
In case you missed it, here's Kimmel in his opening monologue Monday.
We hit some new lows over the weekend with the MAGA.
The suspension came after the FCC chair threatened regulatory action against the network, with former President Trump suggesting that networks providing negative coverage should have their broadcast licenses reviewed. This marks a dramatic escalation in the ongoing battle over media freedom. David Letterman, the legendary former late-night host, has come out swinging against ABC's decision, calling it a dangerous capitulation to authoritarian pressure. Meanwhile, Stephen Colbert and other late-night hosts are rallying to Kimmel's defense, with Colbert characterizing the move as blatant censorship that strikes at the heart of our fundamental freedoms. Democrats in Congress are scrambling to introduce legislation aimed at protecting free speech rights in broadcasting. The pressure on media companies is intensifying across the board. Major broadcasting corporations with government vulnerabilities are bending one after the other to administration pressure.
The program is ending for financial reasons. Regardless, in his show tonight, Colbert speaks about Kimmel. Here's a clip as he first references the FCC's Brendan Carr.
This may seem bad, but Carr was quick to reassure everyone, posting, "While this may be an unprecedented decision, it is important for broadcasters to push back on Disney programming that they determine falls short of community values." Well, you know what my community values are, Buster? Freedom of speech.
Stephen Colbert tonight on the Jimmy Kimmel situation. Adrian Colbert also calling the whole thing blatant censorship.
All right, Paul Hunter in Washington. Well, late-night hosts may be standing up for Kimmel, as Eli Glasner shows us. There's growing concern that big media companies facing government threats just keep folding.
After ABC suspended Kimmel's show, comedians are ringing the alarm bell.
This is what authoritarianism looks like. Look, if they can come for Kimmel, they can come for anybody.
It's more than just a notable moment. It's a scary moment.
Bill Carter writes about late-night television and has followed the Nexstar Media Group, which operates dozens of ABC affiliate stations, and was the first to announce it was preempting Kimmel.
Who are they? Why are they important?
Well, they're a big station group which had reached the maximum allowed by law.
To keep growing, Carter says they need Washington to change the law.
So they have a gigantic vested interest in making the Trump administration happy.
Nexstar was followed by Sinclair, another major owner of many affiliates, who announced they would not air Kimmel. That put pressure on Disney-owned ABC itself, all responding to the FCC's threat. and the power Washington wields.
So they're all struggling with that. And then there are a few big companies, and I would say each and every one of those big companies has some vulnerability to being hobbled by this administration.
Led by a president who just days ago threatened an ABC reporter asking about the Department of Justice's push to go after hate speech.
We'd probably go after people like you because you treat me so unfairly. It's hate. You have a lot of hate in your heart. Maybe they'll come after ABC.
ABC is just one of Trump's targets. CBS paid $16 million to settle a lawsuit with Trump over how 60 Minutes edited an interview with Kamala Harris.
Before we start the show, I want to let
Then there's Stephen Colbert. In July, CBS decided to end the most popular show in late night, hosted by the vocal Trump critic.
I hear Jimmy Kimmel is next. Nope. No, absolutely not, Kimmel. I am the martyr.
1 week after the announcement, Washington approved the merger of CBS owner Paramount with Skydance. With a new $15 billion lawsuit launched at the New York Times, the cuts to funding hurting NPR and PBS, and the president already taking aim at other late-night hosts sharing on social media, that leaves Jimmy and Seth. Do it, NBC. Hollywood watchers say the threat of...
Nexstar Media and Sinclair have already announced they won't air Kimmel's show, adding to the mounting pressure on Disney-owned ABC. In a related development, CBS recently paid $60 million to settle a lawsuit over a 60 Minutes interview with Vice President Kamala Harris. Even Stephen Colbert's show, despite being the most popular in late night, faces cancellation threats. Trump has taken to social media with ominous warnings stating, quote, "That leaves Jimmy and Seth. Do it, NBC," unquote. Hollywood insiders report a palpable feeling of dread about where this censorship campaign will ultimately lead, with many fearing this is just the beginning of a broader crackdown on dissenting voices in media. Meanwhile, in a significant diplomatic development, Prime Minister Mark Carney has embarked on a crucial two-day trade mission to Mexico City to strengthen their economic partnership amid mounting trade tensions.
Prime Minister Mark Carney, meantime, now in Mexico on a big trade trip in the face of Donald Trump's trade war against Canada and Mexico as well. This will be a two-day whirlwind visit, about 36 hours or so. Mark Carney will be in Mexico City as both countries brace for the U.S. planned renegotiation of the continental trade deal that Mexico and Canada have with the U.S. Remember, Mark Carney has long talked about how Canada is one of the best protected countries in the world in terms of a trade deal, because a lot of the trade that goes back and forth across the border is protected under the current deal. If that deal gets renegotiated, then what? That is the question. We also expect Carney to sign a strategic partnership with Mexico's president as well, to cover things like trade, health, agriculture, infrastructure, emergency preparedness, security as well. A lot of this, though, is about navigating.
This marks the first visit by a Canadian Prime Minister to Mexico in 8 years, signaling a major shift in North American diplomatic relations. The visit includes signing a comprehensive strategic partnership with Mexico's president covering trade, health, agriculture, infrastructure, emergency preparedness, and security. Political analyst Lori Turnbull notes that Carney is taking a markedly different diplomatic approach, focusing on relationship building and allowing Canada to present itself differently on the international stage. This represents a dramatic departure from previous tensions when Canada objected to being grouped with Mexico on border security issues. Now, both nations are working to reset the relationship between Canada and Mexico.
Well, Sandy, it's important, right? It's an opportunity to reset the relationship with Mexico, which does need some resetting. If you think back to Trump's initial economic threats against Canada back in, let's say, November of last year, there were comments from a few provincial premiers and even the prime minister at the time that intimated we could be considering going ahead on a bilateral basis with the United States. That ruffled a lot of feathers in Mexico. So this trip is very important from the viewpoint. If we don't want to pursue just a bilateral relationship, we want to keep things on a trilateral path, then we need to reset things, and that's the Prime Minister's aim.
The timing of this diplomatic outreach is particularly significant as both countries prepare for the 2026 CUSMA review while facing the threat of substantial tariffs from the United States. Canada faces potential 35% tariffs, while Mexico confronts 25% tariffs, plus additional penalties related to fentanyl concerns. However, Trump's aggressive tariff strategy appears to be backfiring spectacularly, Rather than dividing these neighboring countries as intended, it has instead unified them against American economic threats.
Attacking both at once, Trump has pushed them closer together. The numbers tell the story. Mexico and Canada are the U.S.'s largest and second largest trading partners. At the same time, the U.S. is their top trading partner. That creates what economists call mutual vulnerability. Everyone has too much to lose if trade collapses. But instead of breaking that system apart, Trump's tariffs are creating new opportunities for Canada and Mexico to integrate further at America's expense. By slapping higher tariffs on Chinese goods and on Canadian or Mexican ones, Trump has accidentally made North American supply chains more competitive. Canadian and Mexican firms are grabbing U.S. market share from Chinese rivals, while American companies are rediscovering that regional supply chains are cheaper and more reliable than Asian ones. Here's where Trump's economic illiteracy is on full display. Tariffs are paid by U.S. importers, not foreign governments. That means higher costs for American businesses and consumers. A 35% tariff on Canadian steel raises U.S. manufacturing costs. A 25% tariff on Mexican pharmaceuticals drives up American healthcare costs. Meanwhile, Canadian and Mexican exporters who qualify for USMCA exemptions are actually gaining ground. In short, Trump is weakening American competitiveness while strengthening the very countries he's trying to punish.
The two nations are now coordinating their strategies for the upcoming trade agreement review and working to eliminate bilateral tariffs before year's end. Mexican President Sheinbaum has expressed strong interest in expanding maritime trade infrastructure between the two nations.
From reporters after meeting with top officials there to get a vital trade relationship back on track. Evan Dyer has been watching it all. So, Evan, can you bring us up to speed?
Adrian, the Canadian and Mexican leaders appear to have smoothed over the tensions that emerged following the election of Donald Trump when he succeeded in driving a wedge between the two countries with his tariff plans, causing some Canadian politicians to suggest that Mexico should be cut out of the CUSMA trade deal. These are two countries that face a common threat, and they seem to have decided they're stronger facing it together.
We are both undertaking massive transformations of our economy. Plan Mexico, Canada strong. Our efforts will be strengthened by working together.
Mexico and Canada want to do more on two fronts. First, work together to save North America-wide free trade by coordinating strategies for next year's review of CUSMA, the trade deal that replaced the original NAFTA 5 years ago.
How do we eliminate these tariffs that we both face prior to the end of the year so that we can have a fruitful discussion on the USMCA future beginning in 2026?
The two countries also have to cooperate without provoking the Trump administration.
They're going to be very careful to make sure that the visit is not portrayed as some kind of strategic meeting or ganging up in some way with the White House.
But both countries know they can't count on restoring normal trade with the U.S., and both are looking for new partners.
It's a chance for us to talk not just about the tariff dispute that's underway, but also what are we going to be able to do to deepen our bilateral relationships with each other. We've spent way too much time ignoring each other. Now it's time to do more.
President Sheinbaum said she wanted to strengthen maritime trade with Canada. Mexico is in the middle of a huge renewal of its infrastructure.
Mexican officials are even discussing the possibility of directly investing in Canadian port expansion, potentially building terminals dedicated exclusively to Canada-Mexico trade that would bypass U.S. ports entirely. In an unexpected development, President Sheinbaum has also shown keen interest in Canada's healthcare system, inquiring about potentially adapting elements of it for implementation in Mexico. This level of cooperation extends far beyond typical trade discussions and suggests a fundamental realignment of North American economic relationships. The economic consequences for the United States are already becoming apparent. Canadian tourism to the U.S. has dropped by 40%, threatening $4 billion in losses for American businesses. Manufacturing costs are rising, consumer prices are increasing, and Canada and Mexico are rapidly developing alternative trade infrastructure that reduces their dependence on American markets. The America First approach has paradoxically made America less central and less trusted in continental trade. As these two stories continue to develop, we're witnessing a profound transformation of both the media landscape and North American economic relations. The suspension of Jimmy Kimmel represents a chilling precedent for press freedom, while the Canada-Mexico alliance signals a new era where America's neighbors are charting their own course. Stay tuned for continuing coverage of these breaking developments.